Ed Orgeron did take time to mention what he and his staff are doing with the players and how they're addressing everything that's happened in our country with the protests. Give a listen.
We had a great team meeting with our football team, and I talked to them about specific stuff that was going on in the world today and about our football team. And then I had a leadership committee, and 12 of our guys and some of our coaches. We met together and let them voice their opinion, listen to every one of them for us to come up with a solution. And one of the solutions that they came up with as a group and to represent the team, that we're going to register to vote, that the guys wanted to take action, register to vote, and all our players will be checking in with Derek Panansky today, and we're going to register to vote online.
That's pretty cool. A lot of people have talked a lot. They've posted a lot on social media, and a question a lot of people have had is, what can we do? What action can we put behind the words and the feelings that people have? Well, registering to vote's a good one. So good on Coach O and the staff, the leadership council of players deciding they all want to register to vote, and they're taking the initiative to get everybody on that team registered to vote. So that's a great action initiative that everybody's doing. Now, today formally is the day that the football players are on the field, not on the field, excuse me, in the weight room working out. So yesterday was supposed to be that day. Cristobal came through and LSU had to shut down the campus, but now LSU is back on the in the weight room with Tommy Moffitt. Here was Ed Orgeron talking about what they were doing today in these workouts.
You know, Tommy, we're gonna squat, we're gonna clean, and we're gonna bench press today. He talked to them all about it last night. They're going to be doing some stretching and conditioning, as you know. Tommy's going to do a great job. We got 4 days this week, but I do believe Team Moffitt, our team came back ready, and they're going to do a great job today.
So, team's ready. Of course, you've got a transition from a 4-3 to a 3-4. Ed Orgeron in his position group breakdowns did today talk about running back and linebacker. Let's start with linebacker, because this is really, when you talk about this offseason, LSU lost its top 4 linebackers from a year ago. You got to count Chasson. Obviously, he's an outside linebacker. But Chasson, Queen, Phillips, Divinity, I mean, you got gutted at that position. You know, Jacob Phillips was your leading tackler a year ago. Chasson and Queen both went in round 1. Divinity was such a good player for you. And you lost all those guys. So, major turnover at that spot, yet LSU has found a way in this offseason. It's one of the things we've talked about with Ed Orgeron and how he's, in the way he's recruited, not just using the high school ranks, but also JUCO and grad transfers to supplement his roster. And that's what you would refer to as roster maintenance. It's all about making sure that you are maintaining your roster and not allowing gaps, not getting too heavy at one spot or too light at another. Roster maintenance has been huge, and Ed Orgeron has done a fantastic job of it. We saw it at quarterback, obviously, with Joe Burrow. They've supplemented spots like tight end. Think about Thad Moss. I mean, you went to NC State and got Thad Moss. Using the traditional transfer market is not something LSU did over the decade before Ed Orgeron. Les Miles didn't really use the traditional transfer market. Sure, they'd add a grad transfer here or there where it worked. They'd go get a guy to JUCO like they did with Zach Mettenberger when needed. But the traditional transfer market isn't something LSU's done a bunch of, but Ed Orgeron is using it. They're finding ways to supplement their roster where they have to. Roster management is so significant, and they've done that now at linebacker. So here was Ed Orgeron talking about the inside linebackers, the Mike linebackers, and what the depth chart looks like right now.
At the Mike linebacker, you have Damone Clark, you have Marcel Brooks, you have Antoine Sapa. Those are 3 outstanding football players. I think that when you look at Damone Clark, we're right now, a guy from Sunderland right here in Baton Rouge, 6'2.5", 237. It looks exactly like a big linebacker like we used to see it. Marcel Brooks is one of the best athletes on our football team. I expect him to have a great year. Antoine Sapa, 6'1.5", 206, one of the best linebackers in the country.
Brooks is really the interesting name there. Like, Damone Clark's going to be in the middle. He's a big physical thumper. I mean, he's the prototypical big interior linebacker that you say, man, shed an offensive lineman to make a tackle. Brooks is the curious one because he's more of the slender, lean, athletic, fast type that you'd expect to be coming off the edge. He was playing outside linebacker. He's not a 4-3 end, so you have to put him at linebacker in this defense, but how do you use him? I doubt very seriously in a traditional 4-3 where you see that Mike linebacker lined up over the center and the two sort of outside the Sam and the Will lined up between the tackle and the ends. I doubt very seriously that you're going to see a guy like Marcel Brooks at your traditional Mike linebacker in a 4-3. How they get creative will be very interested to see. Orgeron talked about the other linebackers there in the depth chart.
And then you got Michael Baskerville. You got Jabril Cox at 6'3", 233. Rashawn Thornton, Ray Thornton, we move from outside linebacker. You got Josh White, who I think is one of the best linebackers we recruited. Can King diagnose? I think you're really going to love him. I expect him to play a lot. And then we also moved Devante Lee, two linebackers. So we stacked as the two stacked linebackers. And you also have Jared Small, right there from Catholic High School, has done a tremendous job. Hunter Foss, Carlton Smith. So we've got some depth there. I think we'll have to rotate our guys there. This is going to be a position that's wide open. Let's see who wins.
So we mentioned the two stack linebackers. So you'll see those two traditional backers kind of playing side by side. If that's Damone, he mentioned it at the top of each position, the two more veteran guys, the juniors, Damone Clark, Micah Baskerville. And he went Clark, Brooks, Sampa. And then on the other side, he went Baskerville, Cox, Ray Thornton. Jabril Cox is going to be that guy. And it's not a slight to Micah Baskerville. You heard Ed say there he's going to have to rotate all those guys. But it's one of those things where you're not just going to allow Jabril Cox to step in and be the starter day one and just hand it to him. But my assumption is as they go through what's looking like it'll be a 6-week ramp-up period to the start of the season, that Jabril Cox is going to be that guy. Damone Clark and Jabril Cox should be your two best linebackers on this team. And when you look at what happened a year ago, Jacob Phillips was your leading tackler. He was your only 100-tackle guy. Your second leading tackler was Jacoby Stevens at 92. He's back. But after that, when you look at returning players, I mean, you got to go down to a Damone Clark at 50 tackles a year ago to find the next leading linebacker, your returning tackler. And you lost a ton of production at that position. So Damone Clark is going to have to go from a 50 to a 100-tackle guy. Jabril Cox made 92 tackles a year ago, but he did it at North Dakota State. You hope he can come in and replicate that and be a 100-tackle guy. But Damone Clark had 50, and then you got to go all the way down to Micah Baskerville, who had 15 tackles a year ago. So your two leading returning linebackers, Damone Clark with 50 tackles, Micah Baskerville with 15. You lost a ton of production, but you can see why Ed Orgeron's excited because he rattled off 8 names there, all guys that can rotate at that position, and you feel really good that you got depth, you can stay fresh, and you have some really solid athleticism there as well. Clark, Brooks, Sampa, Baskerville, Cox, Thornton, White, Lee. Speaking of White and Lee, Orgeron elaborated on both of those guys as well. Josh White is a freshman out of the Houston area, and this is a guy, when Ed Orgeron, you hear Mike Detillier say it often, when Ed Orgeron isn't going to write the story for you, but if you're listening closely enough, he's going to give you the answer. And he brought up Josh White a couple times in this interview when talking about the linebackers.
First of all, very intelligent young man right there from Houston. We did a great job of getting him. A lot of people wanted Josh. Josh can key diagnose. He's very fast to the football. He has a nose to the football. I expect him to be an outstanding linebacker at LSU.
And the other one that's curious is Devante Lee, of course, who's moving from receiver to linebacker. You don't ever see that. You see receivers move to corner. That's not altogether uncommon. To see corners move to receiver, receivers move to corner, sometimes even receiver move to safety. But to see a receiver go to linebacker is just atypical. Sometimes you'll see defensive linemen move to the offensive line. If they're athletic, they might be able to play tackle or vice versa. You might see a tight end move to defensive end. We saw that with TK McClendon, moving from tight end to defensive line this year. Sometimes you can bulk guys up. Like, that makes a lot of sense. Receiver to linebacker, that's rare, but that's what they're asking Devante Lee to do.
Well, he's 6'1", 231. And Devante is an excellent athlete. It may be a position. We're trying to find a spot for Devante. It may be stack linebacker, or it may be a position like we use a position like we use Jacoby Stevens. Jacoby's 6'1", 230, and that might be something that he can do. Is closer to the football, making plays, rushing the passer.
They do love that role. They use Jacoby Stevens in that role. They've used guys like Corey Thompson in that role as well. Guys that were safeties that kind of lined up in a hybrid spot, sort of as an outside linebacker, edge rusher, can cover backs and tight ends out of the backfield, athletic enough to rush the passer, big enough to stop the run, versatile chess piece on the board. Maybe that's the role Devante Lee plays sort of in situational spots this year for the Tigers.